Hello and welcome to the video. This is my annual roundup or kit picks of the kit and stuff that I would recommend and that I use here. Now, first and foremost, let's get into a couple of caveats. This is an incredibly subjective list. This is the stuff that I like. It might not be the stuff that you might like. It might not be the stuff that other content creators like as well. I did a video a while ago talking about why I hate terms such as best and better, because to know what's best for you relies on me understanding what you're looking for, and those kind of terms are often omitted. So just using best and better as kind of clickbait thumbnails doesn't help anybody. So it's worthwhile me taking just a moment to explain the kind of stuff that I like and the reason that I like it before I get into the list. I'll put time codes down below if you want to skip this bit, if you've seen enough of this on the channel already, and you can get into the list. Now, I have done one of these probably the same time every year for 3 or 4 years on the bounce now. An awful lot of the slides are going to be the same because good technology is good technology, good hardware is good hardware, and we're over the hump of the drone racing hype that happened 4 or 5 years ago now, where loads of people were throwing money into the hobby in ideas of making loads and loads of cash. That has all disappeared. However, it's left a number of manufacturers and projects that are driven by people who are actually passionate about doing it. And that, in my humble opinion, means we've got rid of a lot of dross, but it has slowed down the pace of innovation in a number of areas. So that means that things aren't changing as quickly, so the lists are going to be about the same. I fly a lot of stuff here. I like flying whoops, but more like flying quads, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 10-inch quads. I like flying for more than 4 minutes at a time. Ripping round a field at high speed for 2.5 minutes doesn't interest me at all. I'm lucky I live in a beautiful part of the UK where I have access to open countryside, and I love exploring the countryside. For me, the favourite way to fly is fixed wing FPV. It gives the same feeling as those wonderful dreams you occasionally get where you dream that you are flying, having high definition HD FPV into goggles and potentially head tracking as well on a fabulous setup plane that you can fly for 20, 30, 40, 50 minutes at a time. Kind of recreates that feeling in real life. I also love to tinker. I like open source stuff. I like playing with things. I'm not interested in things that just come already set up, unless they're designed to be that way, where you just kind of unbox them and they work. That whole DJI methodology just kind of leaves me cold. I love playing with stuff and tweaking with stuff and changing it to the way that I want. That's why some of the projects like the stuff from Sneaky FPV, Betaflight, iNav, and a host of other things that we run on the hobby are things that I really get excited about and love tinkering with. I personally like technologies and solutions that allow you as a pilot to use it in the way that you want, rather than being too prescriptive and locking you into a particular way of flying. That way, if you want to change how you want to fly on a particular day, you can pick the right thing, or you can tweak it so that it flies in the way that you want. So with all of that caveat stuff out of the way, let's get into the lists. Let's talk first of all about the stuff that I like to build with. You'll have seen tons and tons of build videos on the channel, and you'll see me using the same things over and over again. Why is that? Well, that technology just works. A lot of the stuff that I do here on the channel is really aimed at those of you that are quite new to a subject and trying to demystify some of the complexity that you might have bumped into in other places. So I try and use technology that just works first time every time. If I'm building something like an iNav wing or plane or a Betaflight quad, see all of those things that I've done over the past 6 months, then I will use things like the Maytech flight controllers. I'm a big fan of the Maytech guys. I think they understand what we're doing in the hobby, and they make some fantastic hardware. But more recently, I find myself buying, particularly for the iNav builds in the fixed wing land, more and more of their fixed wing flight controllers, the SpeedyBee F405 wings and the Wing Mini in particular. And actually I used the SpeedyBee stack in that build that I did around Christmas time, where I built a quadcopter initially with Betaflight, then popped it over to iNav, and the stuff just works, and it is incredibly cheap. £34–35 for a wing flight controller means that I can put it in pretty much everything and don't have to worry about removing them. If I'm building another model, it's cheaper to just go and get one. If I do stuff with Arduino Pilot, doing it less with Arduino Pilot at the moment, then you can still use that open source hardware, things like the VTOL stuff from Maytech, the Maytech wing boards in particular have great support. But if you're going to be doing it and going for the gold standard, then the gold standard is still the Cube Pilot system in my humble opinion, and that is going to be the Cube Pilot Orange Plus, which is the kind of workhorse of that particular stuff. However, there are some fantastic solutions from Holybro or Holybro, depending on how you want to say it, and I've used those on the channel as well. In fact, I think the last build that I did, building a big X500 style quad, was using a Holybro flight controller, and it worked spectacularly well. The only comment I will make about stuff is if you are looking to get a flight controller, some of the older, cheaper stuff knocking around now is F411 base. I personally wouldn't build anything new with that now. F411 is supported in the current release of iNav, but it's the last major release of iNav that is going to do it. The next versions of iNav 8, is not going to be able to support it. So I wouldn't do that because ultimately you're going to end up having to rewire everything if you want to move up to take advantage of the new features. So from now on, I would kind of go with your F405 or F7 base processor if you want to have a system that's going to run for more than a year or two. In terms of GPS units, well, I don't really have any strong feelings about that. The Maytech ones, the M10 GPSs are fantastic. They're quite expensive, although I've just ordered a few of the, I think they're GEP-RC ones from Banggood, ordered 2 or 3 at a time and just put them in the build case ready to work. They work really well. These days, I would recommend you go for an M10 based. Most of them are M10 based for the hobby these days. They lock up really quickly and they work spectacularly well. Don't forget, if you're going to use something like iNav, it's worthwhile getting ones with a compass in, and you can wire that up and use that as part of your flying. In terms of batteries, I have been using Gens 8 for a long time. Ever since Hobby King kind of left the UK, I switched over to Gens 8 and Tattoo batteries and absolutely love them. However, there are a couple of other ones like Z and a couple of others who I've started to get in as well, who are good for just kind of grunt work batteries. They are good enough for kind of regular flying, particularly with low power wings and planes. They're relatively cheap and inexpensive. And the Avonic ones in particular seem to be quite good for quads too. So I would check those out. Some of them are available from places like Amazon, particularly the Z batteries are, which make them really easy to get hold of, as well as having their own website. Radio controllers, well, I think if you're looking at investing one now, I think there's only really one choice in terms of an operating system. That's going to be EdgeTX, in my humble opinion. EdgeTX is OpenTX continuing to be developed and getting the features that we pilots use. All of the OpenTX kind of setup stuff that's out there on the internet, and particularly on places like the channel, still work in EdgeTX, but EdgeTX is continuing to develop and provide some really great features. If you're going to be picking a radio system, well, I think you'd be mad at the moment not to pick Express LRS. Still isn't perfect, still has some weird legacy things like the Channel 5 stuff, but it's changing all the time and the developers are listening to us as a community and changing the things that we want. So for me, I would go with an EdgeTX powered radio and an Express LRS powered link. That does mean though with Express LRS and EdgeTX it can be a little bit complicated, but see my EdgeTX for Beginner series to help you get over the hump. Personally, I don't like closed proprietary systems. I find because of the way my things that I like and the way that my brain works, I don't like to be told how I'm allowed to use stuff. Being able to tweak things, add Lua scripts, working with all the third parties and having that kind of ecosystem that all locks together to provide a really fun experience is kind of where I get excited. Radio Master continue to be my default choice for any of those kind of radios. However, Jumper with a T20, I really like that. That is one of the things that I had in over the 12 months. And it's worthwhile commenting on everything that I'm talking about here. I've personally had my paws on. There may be omissions, but I'm not going to talk about products that I haven't had in here to test. Do be aware that at the moment the 900 MHz Express LRS stuff isn't legal to use in the EU. That will probably change over time, I guess, if there's enough need for it. And whereas I was recommending people go for multi-protocol modules, that was more to support legacy receivers that they had in some of their legacy products. So if you have a lot of those older things, you can still get a modern HTX radio with Express LRS and put in a multi-protocol module in the bay at the back, and that'll still allow you to talk to your FreeSky, Spectrum and Futaba receivers and do stuff with bind and fly things too. Next one is potentially one of the most contentious ones in the whole slide deck, is which HDFPV system would I recommend? Well, don't fall for the hype. None of them are perfect. They're all good at one thing or another. Personally, again, because DJI is that closed proprietary system, I'm not a fan of the way that DJI operates, so I'm not going to promote their stuff here on the channel. I bought the FPV HD system initially. I've got 2 sets of their goggles. Am I going to continue to run and buy the next latest greatest thing? No, not really. I like Walksnail because Walksnail actually fits the way that I fly, but there's also HD0 as well, and HD0 and Walksnail are really part of that big open source ecosystem that I talk about that I really love, allowing me to do things like tweak the way it works, also upload custom fonts, put my logo in the display. Those kind of things make me very happy. So that is the one that fits me, but don't be fooled by those saying this is the best. See my comment before about why I don't like words like best and better HD FPV system, because it's, again, that is super subjective. In terms of chargers, I still love my AtomRC Dual. It's on the shelf behind me, a little 2-port charger running off AC. It's great to charge batteries or just to keep things topped up. Has a USB charging port at the side, so I can charge my GoPros and things while I'm charging the batteries for a little flight day. That continues to be my #1 favorite 2-port charger. The only big change on this slide from last year is that my 4-port charger has changed. I was running a SkyRC Q200 forever, and I really love it. I haven't quite got rid of it yet and put it in the to be donated pile. It's still around, but I really like the Toolkit RC Q6AC. It's the first Toolkit RC charger that I've had in here that I felt confident and comfortable enough to have as my daily driver. And I guess that speaks volumes to how far they're coming along in terms of their quality, where some of the early stuff was a little bit ropey. I also trust and like ISDT chargers. I've had those in the past. The D2 was my favorite 2-port charger before I got the AtomRC Dual, and that stuff is still high quality. Just those 2 chargers that I've talked about, the Dual and the Q6AC, are the ones that I'm using on a daily basis here. Radio control tools, this list is exactly the same as last year. Nothing has really changed. I like the Toolkit RC stuff. They make a lot of great little testers for your bench. The thing that I have changed this time is I did talk about that Squire ES666 electronic screwdriver. I absolutely love that thing. I continue to use it. I've had it 4 months now, I think at this point, maybe even longer than that. And building and upgrading quads and taking things apart, particularly with all of the bits that you get inside, has been fantastic. So that would be my recommendation for an electronic screwdriver. So you'll notice the same names appearing over and over again, and these are brands that I trust, and you can see the list here on the side of those that I'm currently very active with and kind of always on the lookout for what they're up to and what new stuff is coming out. A couple of names have been added here and a couple have been taken away. One of note that's worthwhile commenting on is Brain FPV. Not because I don't love them anymore. I think the Brain FPV guys do some spectacular technology, but I just haven't seen anything from them new in quite a while. But hopefully they're still well and having a lot of fun. And if they did bring out a new piece of hardware, I'd have it on the channel in a heartbeat. The most telling list on the entire video is probably this one here. As somebody that makes content, that gets sent things for review, that's buying things from themselves all the time, that gets their mitts on lots and lots of stuff, which are the ones that I continue to use for my own personal hobby and enjoyment? So take away all the hype and the clickbait thumbnails and all that stuff that happens on the channel. This is the stuff that I actually rely on. #1, Walksnail for me. Walksnail is the best fit after trying all of them, and the way that Walksnail operate as a organization and work with iNav and Betaflight and Sneaky for the fonts and all that stuff, as well as actually listening to us as pilots, is really good. And I have now pretty much moved all of my technology over to Walksnail for FPV flying. There are 2 radios that I use on a regular basis. Well, 3 if you include the Radio Master Pocket, which I tend to use for whoops. My daily drivers are my aging Tyrannus. Yeah, that's still around. That is for the legacy stuff that I'm using, the old FR Sky receivers. That's still in lots of models that I have here. And some of the models that I have continue to give me an awful lot of fun and enjoyment. And I'm not ripping out stuff when everything's working so well. And the other one is, of course, the Radio Master TX16S. That continues to be the gold standard in terms of an HTX powered radio. I wish that Radio Master would produce a slightly smaller one, more at the size actually of a Tyrannus. That TX16S just feels like a little bit too big for me. I would like a slightly smaller, lighter, more compact radio, but I live in hope. But those are the 2 that I'm flying with most regularly, and you'll see in videos. Wings and planes, well, this list looks very, very similar to what it was last year. There's a couple of extra additions down the bottom. The AtomRC Dolphin, Swordfish and Penguin are all spectacular, and I would recommend them without a thought. Big fan also of the VCI Dove. That is a fab little plane. I wish they'd made the tail so it just clips on the horizontal stabilizer, but they didn't. But the rest of it is pretty fantastic. Hewing Ranger T1 is on there by the skin of its teeth. I think it's an aging design and it's less versatile than some other stuff. I still love the ZOHD Dart and the Dart XL. You can't get the Dart anymore, and I have asked ZOHD to remake them, but the Dart XL I revisited recently, and that is actually still a very, very capable aircraft. And the last one is probably one of the most recent planes that I reviewed, the Reptile Dragon 2. That really impressed me, and it's pretty inexpensive, particularly if you buy it from one of the Chinese warehouses. Quads are the ones that I would pick these days are things like the Gep RC Croc Mini. That runs on a 4S lithium ion. That one's got the DJI system on it, the older DJI system, not one of the O3A units. I do like the HGLRC stuff, the stuff that they did with Dave C for Recon. My Recon 5 disappeared years ago, which I'm heartbroken about. However, I still have my Recon 6, has modern Betaflight on it. I've upgraded the GPS at the back to be an M10 GPS, has Walksnail on it, and it's a ton of fun. And the last one that I'm really enjoying is that Speedy Bee self-build that I did at Christmas. It's now on iNav, and it is fantastic. One of the things that isn't on the list is there isn't any VTOL stuff. I spent a lot of time in 2023 trying to get my head around how you set up hobby grade VTOL stuff, and the answer was they are really tricky. Manufacturers aren't doing enough to set it up, and the software to run them, the firmware both in iNav and particularly in ArduPilot with Quadplane for the tilt motors that the hobby seems to love so much, is a real pig to get right. And if you get anything wrong, you're going to end up with a crash, and you're going to end up with a bag of foam bits and a bucket full of electronics. So that's the roundup. You will have noticed that an awful lot of the things on there are exactly the same list from 2023. And that's because I tend to try and pick, use and fly decent stuff that's going to last. And if it's doing the job and it's making me smile and giving me a lot of enjoyment and it's stuff that I trust, then you know what, I'm going to continue to use it. That's probably no surprise to anybody. Don't forget that some of the stuff that I'm talking about are investments in the hobby. Things like a battery charger, radio, a goggle system for FPV are investments in the hobby, and you're going to use them for 4, 5, 6 years, or in the case of my Tyrannus, probably coming up for 10 years now. So spending £200, £300, £400, £500 on something that is going to be able to be used for that kind of period of time actually ends up not costing you a lot at all, because you're not going to be replacing it after 18 months or 2 years. And my last 2 points are, if I was to make this video in another 2 months' time, some of the things will probably change again. As I get more things in, there would be a couple of changes. But hopefully what you're seeing from here is that it takes something pretty spectacular to make it onto one of these lists. I don't tend to change my minds on a whim, or depending on which way the wind is blowing when I get up in the morning. And my very last point is, if you can, I know lots of the content creators, myself included, we get a lot of stuff from Chinese warehouses. If you do have a local radio controlled hobby shop, my last thought would be, do support them, do patronize them, do buy as much as you can from them. It might cost you an extra $20, $30, but if that means that then you can get help, support, and also take things back if it arrives or you unbox it and things are broken or not right, then you know what? You realize that saving that kind of money can be a false economy. However, once you are reasonably competent and confident to fix things that might have got a bit crushed in the post, then the Chinese warehouses are actually really good. So thank you for sticking with it. Again, thank you for watching the channel. And if you have any wings, planes, quads, or other things that I haven't yet reviewed on the channel that you'd like me to take a look at, do pop them down below. Thank you for watching my video. Check out the playlist, and adding Painless360 to your search terms will help you find my content. If you haven't done so already, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps a lot. You can support the time I spend here answering questions and helping others by using the links in the video description.